What if I told you that I was able to get a Casio with a three-hander, day-date complication and 100 meters of water resistance? You'd say, yeah, we know, it's the Casio edifice. But this isn't the Casio edifice. In fact, I think it's better. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Warlock channel. I hope you are all safe and well. And today we are going to be looking at the Casio MTP 1377D, or given its full name, the 3177D 1AV EF. But I'm going to call this the Casio Edifice Killer. So the cheapest price for this watch that I have seen is $34.99. I was able to pick this up from the UK based retailer Argos. On the Casio website it is £55, and on other sites such as eBay and Amazon they're around that mark as well. But if you can grab it for £35 or even under £40, I think you've got yourself an incredible watch for the money. Let's jump into the specifications of this watch so we get all of that out of the way. So as I mentioned before, this is a day-date display. It's got mineral glass over the top, stainless steel case and bracelet construction, and water resistance up to 100 meters. It's an analog display, obviously. The case width is 39 millimeters. On the Argos website it says 40. On the Amazon website it says 39. I've taken the calipers out and I've measured it at 39.5, so sort of splitting it down the middle. I'm going to go with the 39mm case. It's obviously battery powered quartz movement. It doesn't have a bezel, and it obviously has the day-date display. With Casio, buying it brand new, you of course get the 2-year guarantee that comes with this watch as well. Looking at the face of the dial, it's actually much fancier than you give it credit for. Roman numerals may put some people off, but I actually think it's a really nice touch, and it helps really sort of make the dial pop. This is a gilt dial, which, as you know, gilt is one of my favorite tones that you can have on a dial with a black face. You've got Roman numerals at the 12, 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10, and in the odds you've got just baton indices. All of them have loom on it as well. On the top you've got Casio on the face of the dial. Underneath you've got water resistant to 100 meters, and then at the very bottom in very small writing you have Japan movement as well. Finally, around the outside of the dial you have a minute track that leads all of the way around, and in terms of the ticks, the second hand, all of the ticks hit the point continuously, which I think is really nice and a bit of a stress reliever as well, especially if you're worried about inconsistent ticks on a quartz movement. Finishing on the case of the watch is okay. You've got a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces. In fact, actually it's okay, if not outstanding. The crown guards you've got just at the 3 o'clock lead way to a push-pull crown, so it's not screwed down, and it's unsigned as well. But at the end of the day, this is what you're going to get for, you know, £35. The back of the watch has very simply put on it Casio Japan movement, and then round the outside you've got the 100 meters of water resistance marking, the model number, and the stainless steel construction throughout. Bracelet itself is hollow links. However, where I think it's a bit nicer than the Casio Edifice, and I'm going to just do a brief comparison in a moment, but you have a mixture of brushing, and then you've got these two center links, these two sort of middle parts which are polished. All of these are single links. They're not 5 links, but they have the appearance of being 5 links. It makes it quite rigid, but it's not overly uncomfortable on wrist. Bottom of the bracelet you have the Casio signed clasp, and it's a normal security pusher fold over press clasp. So yes, you've got the cheap press clasp and you've got 2 holes of micro adjustment only. The hollow end links and their single links mean that this watch is quite rigid, but it does fit on wrist and go around my wrist quite nicely. I am quite a fan of the mineral crystal on this watch. It seems to sit a bit like a flat hat sapphire crystal does on the Bulova Luna Pilot, which I often refer back to. But this one is obviously a flat piece of mineral crystal, but it sits quite nicely on the watch, and it sort of shows that there's been more effort put into this watch than one would expect Casio to have put in for the price that you are paying. This watch sits really nicely on my 7-inch wrist. Although it's hollow end links, they are still comfortable. None of the hairs are pinching on this watch as well, which is quite nice. And the Roman numerals and how large they are means that it's easily legible, but it doesn't look like one of those easy reader watches that you see made for older people or for people who are just learning how to tell the time. 100 meters of water resistance on this watch really aids the utility of it. It means that you can wear this watch to the office 9 to 5. You can wear it out weekends, and you can get this watch wet as well, knowing that the watch is going to continue to be in good nick and continue to be looked after so long as you keep that crown pushed in at the right time. So for me, how does this one compare to the Casio Edifice? So in my opinion, I've got both of them side by side, and I'll put some filming of them side by side as well. But first of all, you can tell that the dial and the case on the Casio Edifice is slightly bigger than the Casio MTP. You've just got the date complication on the Casio Edifice. You've got the day-date complication on the MTPV. You've also got a splash of colour on the dial with the Edifice, because you've got the yellow pointer, and I think in some colours it's actually red as well in some colourways, and the yellow 100 meters of water resistance. However, what I do like about the Casio MTP is the minute track is on the outside of the watch, which I think makes it cleaner. I do like the day-date complication as well, because I think that's actually quite a nice touch on this watch and it works quite well. I also think that this watch, and again this is incredibly subjective, but I actually think this watch does look better on a bracelet than the Casio Edifice does. Since reviewing the Casio Edifice, I've put this one on a leather strap, and I've often put it on NATO straps as well. With this Casio, obviously the bracelet isn't great, so I'll be taking it off of there, but if you're looking at it on its own in isolation, I think the bracelet is actually one of the standouts, where it looks so much better than the other hollow end link sort of bracelets you get at the price. I'm not saying it's great by any measure or stretch the imagination. It is a hollow link watch at the end of the day, but it's still good and it will still do the job quite nicely. For those of you who aren't a fan of the Edifice logo, and the Edifice logo being above the Casio, for the MTP you'll also be happy as well, because the logo of Casio just stands alone. However, unlike the Edifice, you have an unsigned push-pull crown, whereas the Casio Edifice does have 100 meters of water resistance and it has got a screw-down signed crown, and that's really one of the only extra benefits that I see with this watch. If you're looking at them on inside profile, they both have downturn of the lugs. However, the Casio Edifice has a much greater and better downturn in my opinion, and generally the finishing on the case is slightly better than the Casio MTP, and that's mainly preference, but there's more brushing on the Edifice than there is on the Casio MTP. Finally, the lume on the watch as well is actually pretty equivalent to each other, so you'd think that you're paying almost double the price for an Edifice, that the lume would be slightly better, but again, they're all much of a muchness. The lume on both watches isn't outstanding. It is the same that you would be getting for any watch under £100. Isn't going to have great lume unless you buy one of the China made AliExpress brands, but the lume on this one is equivalent, so again they're sort of neck and neck when it comes to that. So after putting all of that together, what do you think is the best watch in your opinion? For me, I would have to actually say that the Casio MTP is just the better watch. It has very similar specs to the Edifice. Yes, it's not got that screw down crown that's signed, it's a push-pull normal crown, but you can forgive that when you're paying half of the price of it for the Edifice, and it seems to do everything that the Edifice can do as well. Plus, I think that this one does look really good on wrist, especially when you compare it to how the Edifice looks on wrist as well. I think the gilt and the Roman numerals just gives it something more about it. It has more of a dressier look, but it's also you know, utilitarian as well. It has that 100 meters of water resistance. For me, the MTP, if I had my time again and I had to choose between the Edifice and the MTP and I could only buy one, I would happily buy the MTP and be happy with the choice that I've made. And finally, if you're buying both of these watches brand new at retail, they both are getting harder to find nowadays. You can readily buy this one in the UK. There seems to be a bit of a surplus of it on Argos and on eBay and on Amazon. However, with the Casio Edifice model, they're not on some of these retailers' websites. On Amazon at the moment, they were out of stock within certain sizes and colorways. However, you still can pick that up too. So it depends on how quickly you'd like to pick it up and the choice you'd like to have as well of colorways. If you're looking for a choice of colorways, then you've got the Edifice, and as long as you can find that in a color, then potentially you've got more variety. But I still think value for money wise, the MTP is definitely the watch of choice. So the Casio MTP 1377D 1AVEF. Jesus, Japan watches and their reference numbers. What do you guys think of it? Let me know in the comments below. Have you bought this watch? Have you decided to go for the Edifice instead? Or are you still undecided? Are you still looking for an everyday watch that is under £100? Or are you going to look upwards and look at some of the Seikos that you can get with 100 meters of water resistance in its 5 ranges? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear that. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well. And before you go, there was one thing that I completely forgot to do. So I want to just go back to the specs really quickly. Obviously, I've been rushing through these specs today. I've obviously not had my Weetabix this morning. I didn't go through some of the other parts of the specs, so I'm going to quickly wrap through that before I click off and end this video for today. First of all, battery life is 3 years on the quartz movement. The accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per month, so a pretty accurate girl. I've mentioned to you the dimension, so I've had 39.5mm dimension on my calipers. It is 9.8mm thick and it has a lug to lug of 46mm, which means that again it sits really well on this wrist. All Japanese watches do. Sorry about that, guys. Back to me in the future. Thank you for that pass, Chris. I'm sorry, and I can't believe I missed out those parts of the specifications. But just to wrap up again, the Casio MTP, what do you guys think of it? Do you like it? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Links are also below as well. If you have any questions or comments on this video, please do them in the comment section below. I do try and get to as many of them as I can. But guys, stay safe, and I will see you all in a future video.